You reject information that threatens identity. Why people defend beliefs even when evidence changes. Most people think they make decisions logically. They assume they'll adjust their opinion if new evidence appears. But real life rarely works that cleanly. Sometimes people reject information even when facts are strong and clear. This behavior seems irrational. Why ignore evidence that could help understand reality more accurately? The answer often has less to do with intelligence and more to do with identity. Once a belief connects to how someone sees themselves, defending it feels emotionally important. That's the part people usually underestimate. A disagreement stops feeling informational and starts feeling personal. A belief can begin as something simple, an opinion about health, politics, or daily life. Over time, repeated exposure and emotional attachment turn it into part of someone's identity. Changing the belief no longer feels like changing an idea. It starts feeling like changing part of yourself. The brain treats those beliefs as stable reference points. Information challenging them feels uncomfortable. The human brain values stability more than people realize, and stability does not always mean accuracy. Sometimes the brain prefers familiar ideas because they feel psychologically safe. This raises a strange question. If the brain prioritizes emotional stability, how objective are people during emotionally threatening situations? Most people want to believe they are rational thinkers. But when information threatens identity, emotion appears before logic. That's why conversations become intense immediately. People are defending themselves, not just information. You can see this constantly online now. New evidence appears, and responses become defensive, sarcastic, or aggressive. Many react before fully reading or processing the information. The reaction happens almost automatically. Most people have probably done this. Discomfort appears so quickly. The brain rejects information before considering it. Accepting the idea would require a psychological adjustment, and the brain naturally resists instability. Why intelligence does not automatically make people more objective? People assume intelligent individuals are better at changing their minds. But intelligence can strengthen identity protection. A smart person may become better at defending existing beliefs, building stronger arguments to dismiss opposing evidence. Intelligence itself is neutral. It can help search for truth or rationalize emotionally driven conclusions. This creates a strange situation. Someone sounds logical while deeply attached to protecting identity underneath. The difference between learning and defending yourself. Real learning requires psychological flexibility, tolerating uncertainty to reconsider understanding. Identity protection pushes the opposite direction. Certainty, defensiveness, and quick rejection of threatening information. That conflict explains why changing someone's mind is harder than simply presenting evidence. The issue is deeper than information. People protect emotional stability, social belonging, or how school can accidentally reinforce identity attachment. Education systems reinforce identity labels sometimes. Students get categorized early. Smart, bad at math, quiet, gifted writer, weak test taker. Those labels become internalized and attached to identity. A student believing they are bad at science may reject improvement. Humans protect familiar identities, even when limiting. The familiar feels safer than uncertainty, even if it leads to growth. Why social groups make beliefs harder to change? Beliefs are harder to question when tied to social belonging. Humans want connection and acceptance from groups, family, communities, online spaces, friend groups. Shared beliefs create social stability. Rejecting a belief feels socially risky, not just intellectually uncomfortable. This is why people remain loyal to ideas even after evidence weakens. Changing a belief risks disconnection from the group. That emotional pressure can become stronger than the evidence itself. The internet strengthens identity loops constantly. Modern algorithms intensify this. People are repeatedly shown information that reinforces what they already believe. The environment becomes emotionally comfortable, confirming identity instead of challenging it. When contradictory information appears, it feels almost invasive or aggressive rather than educational. Technology was expected to increase access to diverse information, but sometimes it increases exposure to familiar perspectives. The brain becomes more comfortable hearing itself reflected back repeatedly. Why people double down instead of reconsidering? Sometimes stronger evidence makes people more resistant. The stronger the identity threat, the stronger the defensive reaction. Admitting error may require reconstructing worldview, relationships, or self-image. That is emotionally difficult. So instead of reconsidering, the brain often doubles down harder. The reaction is about psychological protection, not truth. That's why debates become more emotional as evidence increases instead of calmer. The part that feels personally uncomfortable This topic becomes uncomfortable once you realize you are not outside the process either. Everyone has beliefs connected to identity. Everyone has ideas that feel emotionally harder to question. That realization changes the conversation completely. It becomes something much more human. Why awareness matters, even if it does not solve everything. Awareness creates a small pause between reaction and judgment. Instead of immediately rejecting information, you ask why it feels uncomfortable in the first place. Emotional resistance itself becomes useful information. Not every opposing idea is correct, obviously, but emotional discomfort alone does not determine truth. That shift in thinking probably matters more than people realize. People reject information that threatens identity because beliefs are deeply connected to stability, self-image, and social belonging. Once an idea becomes part of how someone sees themselves, changing that idea no longer feels purely intellectual, it feels personal. The brain naturally tries to protect psychological stability even when evidence challenges existing beliefs. And once you recognize how strongly identity shapes reasoning, it becomes easier to understand why changing minds is much more complicated than simply presenting facts. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to learn more.